A lot of people see me as an entrepreneur because I run a business. Those who know me closely define me as a lifelong learner, a professional student. And I define myself as a socio-ecological researcher and practitioner. And what I would describe myself as doing through my research is sustainable business model innovation. And I never imagined myself being in this field. It's running a business as such, but life brought me in this path. I couldn't get it out of my head that this problem is not solved. So so we started from, okay, I separated the waste in my house. This was like in 2017, just before we started, and there was like 16 different types of waste. If you like look at what's the waste in your house.
I was shocked how people live so close to the dump. It's literally like a natural mountain. It's so huge. Hi, welcome to another episode of the Founders Podcast. And today we have Savandie Abeyratna from the Green Life Generation to talk to us about women entrepreneurship, upcycling, and also empowering women in your own business. So to start off with, Savandie, give our audience a bit of an introduction about yourself. How did you come to this field? And how did this whole dream kind of start for you?
Okay, hi guys. A lot of people see me as an entrepreneur because I run a business. Those who know me closely define me as a lifelong learner, a professional student. And I define myself as a socio-ecological researcher and practitioner. And what I would describe myself as doing through my research is sustainable business model innovation. And I never imagined myself being in this field. It's running a business as such, but life brought me in this pathway. I'm somebody who in school days was not really aware of what I wanted to do with my life. And if you take the Sri Lankan education system, we have the boxes of doctor, lawyer, engineer, and I didn't fit in any of those. So going to an international school, the ultimate thing to do after your education was, obviously, if your family can afford it, go overseas to study. So I went to the UK. As soon as I finished my A levels, I wasn't a high achieving student, but I had the family support, and also my school had links with the university overseas, which made the process easier for me. And so I did biology. Obviously, I chose biology because it's the brainier subject. And in hindsight, that's what everybody says, right? If
I did
you know,
biology too. Me too.
just to look brainy, but and I mean, nobody thinks about commerce, but now look, we are in that stream after many years. So yeah, biology, and because my university offered combined degrees, I did IT. So I was like searching for myself. So I spent the next, I think, 15 years in full-time education, doing masters after masters, just trying to find that space where I fit in. And like I said, I had the support system of my family and also my universities to kind of love that. Um, During that time, of course, IT became my specialism. And with IT, one of the things is problem solving. And we don't really like look at that as a skill. We are very knowledge and subject specific, but in terms of a skill, problem solving. And I heard this definition of entrepreneurship at some event, and it was as entrepreneurs we are inherently problem solvers. We are trying to solve a problem and kind of find an economic system within it, where you can generate money and also create employment and all these things. So I find, how I got into this is kind of this, my thinking as a problem solver, and then getting hooked into a problem that I really wanted to solve. And then that is what kind of drove me here. So uh, I was I attempted PhDs 2 times and failed both times. So once in one the PhD attempt, it wasn't actually my problem. I was solving someone else's problem, so I didn't have the inherent motivation. But my second attempt at a PhD was, I looked at a problem that I wanted to solve, which was the lives of Sri Lankan migrant domestic workers. So women, majority of women from lower, the lower income, you can't even say lower income, like, migrating to the Middle East is the exit from problems for not only for women, for people from Sri Lanka migrating for employment. So migrant domestic labor was something that I witnessed in our society. So it was something that I was interested in also, mainly because in 2013, what happened to Rizana Taufik in Saudi Arabia. She went from Sri Lanka on a, I think, forged passport. She was
Yeah,
underage. She was around
underage. Yes.
16. And the kid under her care died, unfortunately, and she was sentenced to death. So this really shook me. And when I was writing my PhD proposal for my second attempt at PhD, this was the driving factor. So I tried to look at the lives of Sri Lankan migrant domestic workers and how do we protect them, what is going on. And so I started my PhD journey looking into this. And then in 2017, I had just gotten married and I decided to move back to Sri Lanka. And that's when the second tragedy happened, which was the Meetotamulla garbage dump collapse.
Yeah, I remember I
So,
went to cover it from Daily News, and I was shocked how people live so close to the dump. It's literally like a natural mountain. It's so huge, and the dirty water had just like a river gone into the houses of the people around, and it was just like horrible to even, I mean, to cover as journalists at that time. It was horrible. Like, we had to be like, oh God, we had to go there and cover that. It is unbearable to think how they lived there for so long, by the way. I mean, before the tragedy also, it's yeah, it's not the best environment. But yeah, I don't know how you
yeah,
saw it.
so it was something that was obviously not obvious, but when it happened, it just it shook me, just like Rizana's story shook me. So already studying the lives of migrant domestic workers, I had started to see the social and economic challenges and issues in the country. One of the main things was the unsustainability of livelihoods, that the incomes were not enough to sustain the outgoings, the expenses, and life was unsustainable, which was the main driving force for people to migrate overseas to balance that. And when this Meetotamulla garbage dump collapse happened, what it also showed me was the unsustainability of from an environmental point of view. When we think of sustainability, we always think environment, but before I came into this field of environment, I was kind of looking at unsustainability mostly from an economic point of view. So what this showed me was that we needed to address all three in our solutions. Um, so yeah, that meant that I needed to address the environmental challenges as well if we are looking at solutions. um, and I had like I said, I had just moved to Sri Lanka from living in the UK for over 15 years. I had naturalized and got a British citizenship, and things had shifted a lot in my life as well. And so initially I was looking at Sri Lanka from what I say is a telescope view, and certainly I was looking at it from a microscopic view. And things changed for me, and I got into action, because I think as researchers, there's this view that you are detached from the problem you're studying, but you are very much
You're
part
very
of it,
much
in it. And it's you cannot, like, there are so many biases, so many, there's something personal about the research that you do, at least in like the social sciences and things. So yeah, we, on one side, my husband and I were thinking of, okay, what do we because it's a remigration as well. I have just remigrated back to my country. So and I chose to live in Kandy, in my village. There's always out migration. There's not many opportunities that can give you good money in villages, or even in Kandy. You have to move to the capital and go overseas. That's the pull always. So we had to figure out what we are going to do in Sri Lanka, in our village. And that's when we started looking at, okay, we have this waste problem, and looking at the waste in our house and thinking of, can we make something from this? And that's how, like, I'm upcycled started. But before that, for Green Life Generation, I already had like an idea of it as a consultancy, because research was my background. So I was the reason that I started my PhD, the second attempt at the PhD, was to like help, to do research and find solutions to these problems, policy level solutions. But what Green Life Generation ended up is finding grassroots solutions to, so not top down solutions, but bottom up solutions. So I think I'll just stop there, but maybe you can ask me some more questions and
yeah.
we can
So
go in.
basically, I'm so curious, how many masters did you end up doing?
Right. I did two masters, and then like one of the PhDs was a MPhil. So that so
Right.
so three masters
A
altogether.
serial
Um,
learner.
yeah, yeah, professional student. That's what they call
That's what they call it.
it.
So that's really interesting. So you've studied social sciences, and then this is the companies in environmental solutions, and you also are trying to look for solutions in employing these women. I mean, you ended up employing mostly women from the village you spoke of, Kengala, right? In Kandy. It's just like, how did you bring all this together, like all these experiences in one place at Green Life Generation, which was originally an R&D company, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. So I told you we started like experimenting at home. That was the first research and development, because I was doing my PhD work anyway. And my husband was good with his hands, so we started looking at all the waste we had in the house. So looking at waste was just more of like a side thing, like it was just a activist kind of thing, because it was linked to our life. We generate waste in our homes as consumers. You cannot get away from it. And we can, using a reusable bag, these kind of sustainable lifestyle practices are there, but you cannot get away from the fact you do generate waste in your home, from your salt packet to your sugar packet to, we are consumers, and we do
Yeah.
generate that waste, and there is no solution for that than put it in the bin. You can segregate it in your house, but even if you segregate it, it goes to the waste dump and gets incinerated. It's just it just was something that was not fitting in. It's just like, there's something wrong here, like I'm not
Yeah.
I couldn't get it out of my head that this problem is not solved. So so we started from, okay, let's I separated the waste in my house. This was like in 2017, just before we started, and there was like 16 different types of waste. If like look at what's the waste in your house, and things like batteries to like little pieces of rubber. When you like
Yeah.
Yeah.
really break it down, 16 different types. And I was like, okay, yeah, like what do we do with it? So we started with some wood waste we had in the house, and that's my husband was playing with it, and we were trying to make a gift for our friend's birthday. And that's how we kind of and we are not artists. We both of us cannot like draw, do this kind of arty stuff, but I think we are creatives.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were struggling to like write her name on the piece of wood because we are not artists. And I was like, let's, if we could just write something in these blocks of wood, it would be really cool. But we are not, we are unable to do it. And we saw a rubber stamp shop open up close to our house that
Right.
when we were just going to Digana for some work. And I was like, that's the thing, rubber stamps on wood.
That,
So we just
yeah.
started with a phrase that I really keep in my mind all the time with life. It's from Three Idiots, all is
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
well.
Yes.
So these were the two first ones that we did was all is well and Subhadavasak. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
so we call these good vibes because it's just little positive things, affirmations for
Mm-hmm.
yourself. So we got the seals made for all is well and Subhadavasak, and we just cut little pieces of wood that we found into bits, painted them in the back, and rubber stamped positive words on it, and that's the start of
And
good.
you know, by the time we had met, you had been doing that for a while. You donated
Yes,
hundreds of those pieces for one of
yes,
our projects,
yes,
and everyone loved it. They kept asking me, "Where did you get this? Where did you get this?" I said, "I am upcycled. She donated this for the project." And you had so many other pieces of like you had it in Sinhala, you had it in
yeah,
English, and you were talking about hope, you're talking about peace. It was really, really nice.
yes,
It just grew, and there was a
yes.
demand
It
for
did.
it.
Yeah, it did. So, like I said, it's like this is not like a very straightforward, thought out journey. It's things that
As it
happen.
comes, the ad
Yeah,
hoc also.
yes,
Well,
and
that's how business works usually.
yes,
That- So how did
and
you
yeah.
connect it? How did you take it from that idea stage to the upcycle brand that you build eventually?
Yeah, so we had like some product now, and then it was like, okay, so where do we take it? So at that point it was like October 2017,
Mm-hmm.
and my husband and I had a deadline like, okay, we need to figure out whether we are going to do something ourselves or you're going for a job somewhere. That was the
Um,
option for
Hmm.
him. So are we
right.
going to spend the next 2 months like building something of ours, or you go for a job? So we developed the product, and we'd also like, we in our travels we travel to like all these souvenir shops, and where I would call it like market research, looking at, because I always had a love for arts and crafts in Sri Lanka, and like when I was living overseas, how do we kind of help local artisans market and sell their products, because selling was always like an issue, especially for people in the margins, because
Mm-hmm.
not everybody comes into the margins. So I had that interest inside me, and then we did the market research in like the souvenir shops, and we had like a few made. So the Subhadavasak and the All is Well, and like couple more we got done, because as soon as you have the idea of what the words are, you just get the stamps done, and then it's ready.
Mm-hmm.
So we came to Colombo with some samples, and we took it to Luxala. And Luxala, I think it was the director at the time, really liked the product. Because he'd not seen something like this. I mean, it's not like your very like very arty product. It's just little word blocks. But he hadn't seen it before, so he liked it. He liked the Subhadasak, and he said, "Okay, I'll give you the first order." So this was the spark. It was like, okay, it's moving. Because we had aimed for Christmas markets, but the Luxor order gave us that push to get production going. And at that time, there was a lady who was doing some domestic work for my mom, a single mother, and her daughter was in Montessori. And obviously, like, these things are playing at the back of my head, the lives of women who are migrating and all these things are there. And she was the first one who started working, like she and her family. And she said, because her daughter was going to Montessori, she said there are all these mothers who bring their kids to Montessori, and they have to pick them up at 12. So they have 4 hours in the morning that nobody wants to give them a job, and they are ready to work. And I was like, okay, great, that's who's going to. Yeah. And
Yeah.
we had enough money from our savings, from our wedding money, to pay 6 women for 2 months. So we said, okay, let's go. So let's take 6 women. And that was the start, because I knew that from my research, something that I've had found out was that this self-employment and piece rate model is not working. It's very insecure. So if we are going, it needs to go into the SME model. It has to be SME level,
Can
where
you,
we.
sorry, Savandie, can you explain when you say self-employment and piece rate model, what does that entail, like for our
Okay.
audience?
Yeah, so self-employment is, so let's say I designed this product and then I asked women in the village to stay. It's not necessarily about staying at home, but that they do production whatever they can, and so it's more of a supply chain rather than organization. And then I source from them, I buy from them how many pieces they have done. If they have done 10 pieces, I pay them for the 10 pieces and I buy it and then I sell it. So a supply chain buying and selling sort of model versus an employment model where they are part of the family, they are employed, they get maternity benefits, they get their salary, and yes, incentives and things. I mean, we haven't been able to build that to the best we can, but we have done the best. We haven't been able to build it to the best that is possible, but we have done the best we can. So in terms of not only maternity benefits, but what I realized when I was pregnant is that you get sick with morning sickness and you cannot go to work. So even compensating that when they cannot come to work. So
Yeah.
it's like pre pre you know pre-maternal
Yeah.
benefits.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's because when you work as a self-employed woman in micro enterprises, you don't have that support system. You are invisible. You are alone. And what the SME model does is it brings you into like the community and a community of others, and you have this family of workers, and to try and make that environment very different from what we see in garment factories and the traditional target based system to a more free uh, workplace. So what I call it is a feminist workplace. So I try to incorporate everything that I've learned from women's rights, women's issues into that workplace. Like I said, things like maternity benefits and even things like using the phone, because these women are mothers, and as a mother, like the anxiety of having your child somewhere in class, or just and you need to be accessible. People, that's your husband asking for something, maybe your
Yeah.
child wanting you to pick you up, or something's changed. So that accessibility is important, and so I don't put any restrictions on using your phone at work. So these are little things, and I think, like, when we talk of women entrepreneurs and women empowerment, I think empowerment is like, uh, I feel like in the Sri Lankan ecosystems, maybe it's not just about economic empowerment. Maybe they get money through the work transaction, but there's just so much more, that if you are accessible within your work environment. I mean, these can be contested, like things like productivity, How
Yeah.
productive are you if you can answer your work at phone,
Phone
your
at
phone
work.
at work, sorry. But if you look at it in terms of women empowerment, that freedom within your
Mhm.
workplace to also be accessible to your family actually goes a long way. So empowerment is a deeper word, and there are many ways we can empower women, not just economic. It brings to me to a word. Let me see whether I will remember it. Professor Naila Kabir. She calls it distressed sale of labor. So,
Mm.
a lot of these women empowerment programs, putting women into like self-employment or even employment within like the wrong, like this productivity focused work environment. What it does is because of that woman who is entering the workforce, she needs the money. That's why she's entering the workforce. But what she's doing is a distressed sale of labor. She's distressed, although she's selling her labor, and that is not empowerment. So what I try to do is de-stress. So she is
Mm.
selling her labor in a very de-stressed environment, not a distressed environment.
Very interesting. I just want to highlight this point here of
Yeah.
like creating a workplace that is friendly for women, right? You often read that the current workplace model is designed for men, right?
Mhm.
It doesn't take into it compartmentalizes the family life and then work life, right? Even garment factories, which employ so many women, um, it's not designed for women, right? It also kind of like a replication of the maybe the Ford car model in America, how they, just division of labor kind of thing. So in that sense, you have sought to go for a middle ground between that factory kind of model and self-employment model. You're finding kind of a middle space where women are able to both work and live. I guess that family and work life kind of balances out in the workplace. So that's a very interesting concept because even now, as female entrepreneurs, we also tend to go out and create our workplaces that are kind of traditional, don't we? Like, even though we have issues, we don't take that into account when we make our own businesses. So, how did your experiences, for example, you said when you were pregnant and then when you became a mother and things like that, how did that kind of help you generate this new kind of model for your business? I mean, you also probably thought of the productivity angle also, like, am I going to make enough money if and not compromise my profit, and also create a very beneficial work environment? I mean, if you understand what I meant, like, how did you balance those objectives when you were creating your model?
Um, so like I said at the beginning, it was more about like me and my husband and my family. How are we going to like
Mm.
create a life for us in living in a village? Of
Mm.
course, my PhD was a separate, different side, wasn't linked to my livelihood. It was, something professional for me to use later on. But all these came together. It's like I said, it's linked, because what I'm studying, what I'm reading cannot be detached from what I'm doing. And
Mhm.
this is where my research kind of turned into what I called autoethnography. It's studying
Mhm.
myself, my relationship to my place where I am, and also the people I'm with, while I'm reading all these theoretical things about women and gender and rights and migration, and which is more about place and things. And I lost my train of thought there. Sorry, please help me.
Mom
Yeah.
brain.
So
Yes.
she's just asking for how you found the balance in
Oh,
between.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, um, yeah, sorry again.
About how you created that perfect work environment.
Work-life balance.
Not
Yes.
work-life balance, but like a employee model,
Yeah,
like,
the model. Yeah.
where, yeah.
Yeah. So my research, right? Yeah. So the autoethnographic, and then it became action research.
Mm-hmm.
So when we study migrant domestic workers and the lives of migrant domestic workers, we, all the researchers before me and, after me, I hope not, like we go into this class of think tank class, I call it. We become consultants. We become, people, women who work in UN, maybe. I mean, that was one of my aspirations, because we think that the UN is the place where we can help solve these problems
Mm-hmm.
of the world, the ILO, if it's labor issues. It's the place where, and you need a PhD and you need these kind of things to go there. So although I had this passion for obviously solving problems, it was also my perception of where I can solve this. And I
Mm-hmm.
thought it was going to be ILO, UN, or all these big organizations. But I ended up in my village. So
And you
so it was
discovered that green life generation was the way to go.
it was the
Settle
way.
there.
Yes. Yeah, so it was like, okay, I have so much control within myself of solving these problems. I don't need to go to UN and build these laws and things from the top. I can do it within my organization, and I can build these things that I'm learning into the model. So that is why I call what I was doing sustainable business model innovation. So I'm building. And um, and about money, like, yeah, we were thinking, okay, what's our livelihood going to be? But um, we haven't made any money. We have been putting money into it constantly. We started with what we had, and we have been like draining our parents, and our friends have been very supportive. We have sold things in market, and we have got some revenue. That was kind of the thing that kept us going. Like, there is something here. If nobody was buying your product, you would stop, right? Like,
There's a
Yeah.
but
possible
because
growth,
people,
there's potential.
yeah, there's potential, so we kept going because that market demand was there, but it didn't mean that uh, that there was profits. There's never been profits. And
Mm-hmm.
so now, the the ultimate end of sustainable business model innovation is building that model that can stand on itself, and
Mm-hmm.
that is profitable. So I'm still doing it. It's not reached that point, and that means like continuously, like, facing the crisis. If you imagine 2017 we started, 2018, when we started, we were like island life, just this is such a new adventure. And then 2018 we had the riots in our village, the Digana
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
riots.
we're
Yeah,
gonna
the
And
rise.
that,
right.
yeah, so that like totally shook me again, because obviously this is the village I grew up listening to the sound of the mosque, the teru and the temple. And to have your village really destroyed, it's like, it really shakes you, like it's right at your doorstep. And
Mm-hmm.
then 2019, the Easter bombs again, like it was such a stomach punch. And then 2020, the COVID. So it's been the crisis years.
Yeah,
And
it's not only doing something in Sri Lanka, but suffering through crisis after
yes,
crisis in this country.
And y'all weathered all of this still, Savandi, through those. Like, how did y'all figure that out? You went from 2017 having this idea, 2018 this happened, 2019 another attack, then you had COVID, and you're still going with this idea of like, okay, this has potential, this has legs. Because you're often, when what you might read online is that, okay, looking at your business, you want to do the research, does it have potential? If it gets past the first 5 years, okay, then you're good to go, right? Okay, so now how did y'all manage these changes, these fluctuations, and take
um,
aspect of the potential of your business?
yeah, so I think when you when you start it, there's things happening externally and there's things happening internally that you have to deal with. So internally, our family was growing, not me and my husband and our kids, but also the women, because
Mm-hmm.
there's all these women who want to come and work, and you want to create the opportunities for more women,
Mm-hmm.
because you want to increase your impact. And obviously, like from a marketing point of view, there is the environmental and the social, that is marketed. Like there's a social enterprise model when we go to sell our products. That is not the reason that I was like increasing employment and like at it. It was because I wanted to solve this problem genuinely, and I wanted to create decent, sustainable, and resilient livelihoods. And resilience
Mm.
is the thing that you're asking me
Yes.
about. It's that how do you
Yes.
just keep
Yeah.
going when you are getting these punches, and you fall to the ground all the time. So, and that is something that we have to build into our businesses. And that is what I'm
Mm.
trying to build. And that is why what I'm doing is autoethnographic, because my
Mm.
experience in how I deal with the
Mhm.
crisis and how I change things within, how I like um, navigate that within the business is that story of developing this business model. And
Mm.
in so when we came towards the Easter attack, so obviously we built the I'm upcycled, the good vibes. It was selling everywhere. It was, I think it's gone all over the world with tourists who came to Sri Lanka and bought these. So within that, when the tourists stopped coming with the
Mm.
Easter tax, more than the Easter tax, the tourists uh, stopped coming after COVID. And with that, it was like we have this product that we can't sell to anybody.
Mhm.
So what do we
Yeah.
do now? Like you cannot keep things going, if you can't, because like I said, that was the whole thing that was keeping us going, the fact that there was some demand in the market. Because
So were
otherwise, this
you,
is just a
how were
charity.
you selling it? Were you selling it online or through like pop-up stores like Good Market, or they had to come to Kengala to buy it? Like how were you reaching your customers?
Yeah, so initially it was like we did markets, like, and then we did good market. And then we went and we found partners who would sell for us. So in Arugambe, different shops, cafes, even in Kandy, in the East Coast. So all these touristy places, and also the South, where they would like, sell for us. And we just produced and shipped it to them, or went and delivered, and they would transfer the money. So it moved into that kind of model where eventually we didn't even need to go to Colombo to sell. We just had all these partners who were selling it for us. And then
Mm.
everybody crashed if you with 2020, 2019, and 2020.
Yeah.
So there are partners, I think, who have like completely closed down, and we haven't even collected money. Like there's just a lot of money lost because we can't bring ourselves to ask them for the money, because we know we all fell together at that point.
Mm. Right.
So it was like a massive loss. Um,
100%.
and something else that happened was like I said, we started with good vibes. Of course, it was upcycling, so we made the brand I'm Upcycled. And when we went for our first market in December 2017, we were telling our story when we were selling the stuff. It was a Christmas market, and we also wanted a bag to put our products into when we give it to the customer. And there was a girl who was working with us, and she was making bags with her mother at nights to make some extra income. So she made a bag from a newspaper, and because that was the first option of upcycling a newspaper. But the thing was, we were calling our products good vibes, and the newspapers had lots of bad news in it, so it just didn't fit in. So we had some construction in our house at that point, and uh, what we did was, there was a lot of cement paper. So we
Mm.
chose the cement paper, which was plain, cleaned it, and we used that to make the bags for the Christmas market. So
Mhm.
when we were selling, we were telling this story as well. And what we saw was there was a lot of demand for the packaging. So it
Okay.
wasn't like we knew that there was a demand for packaging out there. There was our own need,
Mm.
and then we found people were asking, "Oh, how much are the bags?" And we hadn't even, decided on that.
Pricing.
And that's where we met the founders of Celanvi, who are they are French nationals living in Sri Lanka, and they created this cosmetic. brand, and they were looking for packaging for their cosmetics. They were looking for ethical and sustainable packaging, and they said, "Okay, we'll speak to you soon." And by around March next year, they wanted some packaging for their soap and things, and they were our first customer. So the when we shifted into like a different product range, it was mainly customer driven rather than like
Mm.
us
Opportunity
deciding this
driven.
is. Yeah.
Came.
So you have to be like open, to those kind of things, signals,
Changes.
as
Yeah.
yeah, as market
100%.
signals. Yeah, so we moved from like solely B to C model to a B2B model,
Mm-hmm.
where we were we were linked with brands like Celanvi, who were sourcing the packaging for their products from us. And so that side was also, we moved into packaging, and we were doing all this stuff. It was very challenging because upcycled packaging tends to be expensive, and especially with our social model.
Mm-hmm.
It's the eco stuff tends to be more expensive than uneco and unethical stuff, because that is how the world runs. That's the global model. So we had few customers who really liked what we were doing and were willing to make that payment, but there was like always a ceiling of how high we can charge,
Mm-hmm.
and we knew it was not sustainable. But also, when the Easter tax and things like that came, although the B2C model broke down, the B2B model was still carrying on, because they had their direct supplies and things like that. But what it showed me from the, because when we had to focus on the packaging, it's something that requires more attention to detail, and just a lot of
Mm-hmm.
work to make that packaging. um, and obviously the money from the good vibes were not coming in, and we had to cut down on our expenses. And where you can cut down on your expenses is your staff. Now this is
Mm-hmm.
not the opposite of what you want to do. You want to be the safety net for these
Yeah.
women, and when you like take that off them, this is the opposite. And the worst thing was that the women that we had to let go of were the women who were older, who had like a little bit of disabilities, because they cannot produce things in
Mm-hmm.
the way the
Understand.
customer wanted. So that was like, this is just not working. This is not the way that we should, because those are the women we need to hold.
Mm-hmm.
And so so this is where like the rest of the thinking came. It was like, uh, a production model in itself cannot create decent, sustainable, and resilient livelihoods in the bottom,
Mm-hmm.
because women who are over 35, who have some disabilities, and they are we lose our sight after 40. you know we cannot be doing like, some, if it's just the production model, there are things that we cannot do. These things come with our life cycle as we grow older. So these women are going to fall through the cracks if we focus on production based models. So that's where I started to build in services also into the business model, to catch these women who are older, who cannot kind of work in a production system. So
Mm-hmm.
What kind of services?
Services. Question.
okay, services. So 2017, 18, by 2019, we opened our own little retail shop. We are on the roadside. So Digana is also a touristy place, and obviously people uh, travel there. There are hotels and things. So we opened like a little souvenir shop on the roadside. So retail work there is also sort of a service. And then with the crisis, obviously the shop was there, nobody's coming to buy stuff, so we had to close the shop. One of the other things that we also had to go through during the crisis was raw material shortage. Now,
Mm.
when we think of the waste problem and the fact that waste is everywhere, we would think that you would never run out of waste for production.
Mm.
But our raw material was, like I said, cement paper, And
Yeah.
for some of our boxes, we were using things like milk boxes, like anchor boxes, and things like that. So, if you remember in those years, there was a cement crisis. Do you remember?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
which
Yeah,
meant
yeah. It was so expensive also.
yes.
Yeah.
So which meant people were not buying cement. No, the construction industry was falling, which meant we couldn't find cement paper. And there was also a milk crisis, if you remember, milk
Yes.
powder.
Yes. And
Yes.
they
Yes.
ran
So
out of cartons, if I'm not mistaken, right?
what?
The carton boxes were in shortage.
Yes. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
so we couldn't find milk boxes. So the two main raw materials that we were working with, we couldn't find. So we were like, okay, you know, we from what we were consuming, we were putting it into our production. But when the crisis uh, kind of stopped and the country started reopening, two of the women who were older, they said, "Is there any work? Can we come back?" So I thought, okay, the shop is there, nobody's going to buy things, but at least I can give these two women a job and they can
Mm-hmm.
just be there. So they came, and then our shop is opposite the local school.
Mm-hmm.
And we also, because it was a little green shop anyway, we had a second hand rack in the shop. And the women were saying that there's all these women coming and asking whether they can sell their carpets, these little upcycled carpets that these women make, whether they can
Mm-hmm.
sell some of their products in the shop. And that gets a little bit confusing because there's when you take things to sell from others, this checking quality, not quality but more the ethical side of it gets a little bit confusing. So I wasn't really uh, interested in doing that. But what I did notice was that we were opposite a school, and that uh, uh, there are all these mothers coming to drop their kids in school. And I thought maybe we can ask them to bring their waste, like cardboard and the
Mm.
cement paper and things
Cement
like that, and
paper.
they can take something in exchange from the second hand rack. And
Mm.
when this idea came, I realized that it was not a small idea, that it was a big idea, and the
Mm.
small shop was not going to do. And that's when the Bitcoin exchange came.
Mm.
And that
Mm.
is where that we, sorry, I'm just, I don't have a hanky with me. Sorry. So that's where we realized uh, the problem with waste and the waste problem in Sri Lanka. If you take all the post consumption packaging, if you take the cement paper, the milk box, these are all post consumption packaging. What I said in the beginning, that in our household there is some waste
Mm.
that we generate anyway,
16
which is
categories, you said.
16 categories,
16
and within
categories.
that is the things like the salt packet, the chili packet that we go and buy from the supermarket for our consumption. But
Mm.
that packet doesn't have any value in the market. The
Mm.
bottles do, like pet bottles have some value in the market, beer tins maybe, but
Mm.
there is not enough value to make you go and dispose of this in a
Mm.
good way.
Yeah.
So you would rather just burn it, or although it's illegal to burn it, you would
Mm.
just dispose of it ad hocly, or just send it to the trash truck, which ends up in another landfill, back to
Yes.
Mitotamulla kind of situations.
Yeah.
So what Bitcoin exchange does, it values all post-consumption packaging waste and
Mm.
post-consumption consumables in Bitcoin, not in
Mm.
rupees. So if it's rupees, it's led by the market. But Bitcoin is our own currency, so we can say it's and Bitcoin for waste we valued like a toffee paper. I mean, this is still in development, but just to start with, we valued like a toffee paper at 5 Bitcoin. So
Mm.
it has some value. Now, if you take it in rupees, there's no value for a toffee paper.
Mhm.
Then a soap packet, the soap comes in a little packaging,
Yeah.
and
Packet.
that's like 10 Bitcoin. So that, and then you have things in the second-hand shop, things like clothes, shoes, accessories, all these things. So when I got this idea, I told my friends, okay, I'm thinking of starting this
Bitcoin.
thing. Can you donate to me all your second-hand clothes, whatever you have. And my husband and I had some clothes from our kids and things that we could donate to the shop, and we just made the racks. And we were close to the opening day, and we just had like racks and little things in it. uh, but then one of my friends came with like a van full of stuff, and like the shop just got full in few days. And we didn't promote it. It was just like, okay, there's this new shop that's opened up in the village. It You don't buy things from money, you buy things from trash. And everybody just started just coming, bringing their waste in, and it's clean. And that's how the whole bin coin system came. So it's a much bigger idea than the production side. And something that I've also had to think about with I'm Upcycled and the waste problem is this link to consumption and production and uh, sustainability. We like I said, when I started, we first thought of what can we make from waste.
Yeah.
But making again is again like creating waste. Eventually, that's where it ends up. It makes us feel good when we upcycle, but eventually, where is it going to end up? So we have to think of consumption and production, and so this things like reuse. These are services. Repair their services, and these are the businesses of the future. Enabling uh, sustainable livelihoods through these ecosystems where you can you don't necessarily need to buy more, you don't need to make more, you just need to keep using things more and sharing things more, and creating that environment in itself is a sustainable business. And there's just so much more to do in that and develop it. Like I said, it's none of this is making money, it's still in development stage. But this is the future. And yeah, we think future is digital, and yeah, there is aspect of digital, but it's about how we consume our resources and use our resources, stopping things from ending up in landfill, taking
Yeah.
back to the meat of the bull. How do we stop it? Is it just by upcycling? No, it's by reusing, it's by finding pathways to keep things in circulation rather than, end up in landfill. So that keeping materials in circulation takes a lot of hands and a lot of service. And that is my focus right now, is the service side. And I think that is where, like, that is just kind of things that cannot be replicated by machines. And I'm trying to develop that side. So starting from waste collection to repair, reuse, running those reuse shops, that's employment. And just running this whole ecosystems takes a lots of labor. Unfortunately,
True.
we are unable to like keep going because of challenges, but my mind is still going. So
Savandi, your journey is amazing. The number of evolutions that this has taken, right? And we always say to crisis comes change, and to change comes crisis. So as you had you were trying to address two things, right? Let me get this right. The waste and then the employment of women, correct? You wanted them to have resilient, honorable, sustainable living, and you wanted to create that through, okay, we have this waste dump. So two things that moved you. And you're right, as a researcher, you never disconnected from it.
yeah,
You're only more and more invested, right? So then this happens, this evolves, and then you notice the bottlenecks in the model or the ecosystem that you were creating, which was actually not bad news. It was good news about the potential. It just means that it's a problem that needs to be solved. And so you put your creative cap on, and you go in to notice so many aspects in your thing. Supply. If you have consumption, there's always going to be waste. Are we going to have our raw materials for the business that we need? So as the world evolves and changes, you're also accommodating for like how those changes are going to impact such a business such as upcycling, right? And I know I'm using the word business, but what you're actually creating, like you've said, is an ecosystem, a lifestyle, a lifestyle where everyone gets something from it and you are able to get your basic needs met and thrive, right? And then you had the issue of women who get older, who have a disability, who cannot do the nuanced works. Okay, there's a categorization over there. Then you figure this Bitcoin exchange, right? That's really, really, really amazing, Savandi. Like how you have, and it is true, your autoethnographic work is the thing that has been guiding a lot of these things, right? As a mother, as a business owner, as a lifelong professional learner, okay, your professional student, and all these are the interactions that you have had. Savandi, I was just wondering, what is the one thing that you feel okay in all of these things that you have done? Would there have been anything that you would have done differently at any stage with this knowledge retrospective?
With uh, differently. Mm, I try to be like acceptant of the pathway, and to have no regrets. And I like, it's been a long pathway. Like I said, I had to study many things to get to this point. Um, Something that I say is maybe I would have studied like business or logics. This when we are in high school, just taking a different pathway. But I don't think that would really like accommodate me for what I have done, because I think it's that multidisciplinary nature that has brought me
Completely.
here. So I like to think that like I said, not to live with no regrets. But when I think of what I would have done differently, I'm just trying to think of something. Just give me a
It's good.
um
You don't have any then.
yeah, because I like to accept my flaws and my mistakes too. And even in my workplace, something that I say is there are no mistakes, there's
Mm-hmm.
only learning.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean,
So
That,
everything you have done has brought you to this place, right?
yes,
yeah.
Like what Rushma said, I see that you have, when we first contacted you for the podcast, you actually had told Rushma that it's not operating anymore. You had closed
yes,
down your factory. And what were you going to
Yeah.
talk about, right? But then from hearing your story, I actually don't see an end actually. I just see
yes,
more
Mhm.
complexity being added to your problem. It's
yes,
actually in a way growing. Your
yes.
Yeah.
idea is actually becoming a bigger idea every time. And now it has come to a very the potential is huge from just a lot of people in this country to make the I mean, to be honest, I mean, you go on Instagram and you see a lot of Sri Lankans making these upcycled stuff in the sense the key tags, the whatever elephants or with the newspapers, even Otara was doing that at one point. But your idea of like connecting the production cycle to the reuse aspect, the whole changing of the way we do business, that's
Mhm.
huge and that's
Mhm.
different. And
Mhm.
that is the idea I see that has potential.
And
It might have started with the tags and the rubber stamp, but now you come to a stage where that's different. Like you can revolutionize the way we do things here in this country.
yeah, and I want to just add on to one thing. I know we're coming towards the end, but what I do want to add on, Savandi, is that what I love listening to your stories, like how you were keeping your eyes open for resources within your community and services within your community that can contribute to this ecosystem, this lifestyle. Like the guy who was doing the rubber stamp, right? It wasn't like, hurry then, mama, I have to go checking candy if there is something available, and then have this conversation between the person, a B2B. Just like, okay, what do we have now? How can we get it done? It's here within the community. Let's get that done. And also the question about when you all was speaking about the women and, allowing the women to use the phone, and, you really touched and tugged on my heartstrings when you spoke about how empowerment is so much bigger than here's your bundle of money, right? It's how you feel. It's not, yes, the money empowers empowers and solves solutions that need this currency. But you're not going to feel empowered at a workplace where you are constricted and you don't have a voice, right? You can't share opinion. You can't talk about, like, hey, just give me a sec. I need to attend to this. Because you're, at the end of the day, you live in a society, your child is going to a school. In this society, you need to be able to step up and be there as a mom, right? But then if you're locked down, you're like, oh, I can't even be a mom in this place. Then it's so disempowered. So I love that model that, you've thought of those aspects, and it is very true. It is very, very true, which, people aren't designing, like Zara said, workplaces for the psychological burden that a lot of women carry. And when I say burden, we don't mean it burden as in a bad thing, but it's just what you carry as a woman, as a homemaker, and as someone also who is going to work, all of these roles. So I think it was just so nice listening and learning, Savandi. It's just fantastic. I am in such awe, and I'm like, oh, okay, so this is okay. So now Zara and I are trying to like set up our startup. We're working with this, and there were just so many lessons. So many lessons to be like, okay, I can't wait
Yeah.
to talk to Zara about this. Like, we should do certain things in
And
this
we
way.
are also now pumped up. You
Yeah.
Great,
changed.
Thank you,
great,
Savandi.
Mhm.
Zara,
great.
I
do you want to add any last
Yeah.
thoughts,
yes,
Savandi, to
I'm
this
just
or Zara?
curious. I just want to ask you, has your like when you first came to Sri Lanka, I may be wrong, but did you think you were going to change Sri Lanka or like change the system? Or I'm going to do something different, I'm come from UK, I'm going to do this. And has that attitude kind of changed now? How has like your view of how to work in Sri Lanka kind of changed over the years?
Yeah, I think, like I said, my initial thing was like going to places like UN, to solve the problems, like this top-down thing. I mean,
Yeah,
of course, there's a part for the top to do, but I think we really underestimate the bottom. And
Mm,
like what Wisma said about the community, keeping an eye, the community in itself, they may be disadvantaged and marginalized economically, and there are things that they don't know, but there's also a lot that they do know. Like I
yeah.
said, the woman who told me that there are mothers, she's the one who showed me who to employ
Mm-hmm.
by showing that gap. The communities know what they don't have, the gaps, and what could work. So like that, I think is a, and that's something that I'm fighting for now, because especially because I'm also now in the margins, in a community, and I know how hard it is to get our voice heard in the top, because we are in the
yeah,
margins. So, so communities, and this is something that I'm working on, redefining communities not as problem spaces but as solution spaces. We
Yes.
may be designing solutions. We have our solutions. You just need to listen to us. Keep your eyes open to us. It's not like, okay, there's this big technology somewhere and we need to go and apply this, like we are such passive, people
yeah,
with
true.
problems. No, we have solutions. We need help. We need, empowerment. We need to be heard. So I think this is like the broader, the fight in activism, that no, we are, with the right resources, the links, networks, we can find solutions ourselves.
Yeah.
Just
Mm-hmm.
we are solution spaces, not just problem spaces. We just don't have enough to keep at it. And I was just thinking of, obviously I have the English knowledge and my social and cultural capital that enables me to, like, voice and speak and still reach many places. Not the most important, but still can. But just imagine how many solutions are lost in our
Yeah,
country just because
true.
we are not listening and not opening our eyes. So just, empowering the communities is not bringing top down solutions. It's working together, listening, opening the eyes, seeing what's already available, and then starting from there. So yeah, I think that's this is the, I think, the gist of localization.
Well said.
Yeah.
Well
Yeah,
said. Yeah.
that's a good note to end on. Thank you so
Yes.
much,
Thank
Savandie.
you, Savandi. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
You
Thank you.
guys.
Thank you for having
And
me.
oh my God, it was such a pleasure.